Hello, all you BC WrestlePod nerds out there, and welcome to another rendition of Dual Dynasty, your weekly WWE review show here at the BC WrestlePod Network thing that we got going on. I am one of your hosts, Mikey, and joining me this week, friend to the channel, love him so much. Nick is back to kind of hang out with us and go over WWE from this past week. Nick,
cheers.
Yeah, man.
Cheers. Thanks for having me. Always a pleasure for you opening the never forbidden door here on the show. So I always appreciate the invite. And I know last week I was supposed to pop on. We had some things scheduled, and then luckily, I guess, luckily in some ways, hopefully not too bad. We had some interesting weather this week that's headed our way in the Northeast. So it opened up my schedule. But more importantly, I'm very happy to hear. I know we spoke offline that things are going well for you. But again, thoughts and prayers for everyone out west. In your home state there. So again, happy to hear that you guys at least are doing well. But again, a lot going on.
No, absolutely, and we appreciate the sentiment. The three of us that are in California, we're keeping an eye on things. Thankfully, we're not in the path of anything, but it's still crazy what's going on. So I appreciate it as always. But we are here to review this week's WWE programming, specifically Monday Night Raw and SmackDown, as we are simultaneously building towards our second Saturday night's main event, which is this upcoming Saturday. And then the following Saturday is the Royal Rumble. Jeez Louise, the Rumble's in 2 weeks.
It feels like everything sneaks up super fast. But it's that season, it's it's WrestleMania season. So you got to love it. The programming's always top notch. This 2 month, it's like Christmas if you're a wrestling fan.
Oh, absolutely. And we definitely got some gifts that we're going to be discussing both on Raw and SmackDown that we got this week. So let's just jump straight into it. We're going to kick things off with Monday Night Raw. So this was the second episode of the Netflix era of Monday Night Raw, which, of course, we're only 2 episodes in, but I'm really enjoying the pacing, if that makes any sense. Everything just fits so well. They have room to do things. I feel like things aren't being dragged out, per se. And I really enjoyed this past week's episode of Raw.
Yeah, it's more, well, Triple H said last week it was going to be more of the episodic, Raw. So I think we saw more of the, because last week it was 100% the feel good. You're going to see all the big names from the future come back, and all the old nostalgia will be there, and all the faces won. And this was more of a traditional Raw of what we're used to seeing. And yeah, a lot to dive into. But you want to kick it off? The Oprah free Royal Rumble giveaway for everyone gets a spot.
Exactly, because that's exactly what kicked Monday Night Raw off this week. We had. Oh my goodness, we had a lot of things go down, but yeah. So we start off with CM Punk, who comes down to the ring. He declares himself for the Rumble, which, is what was expected. But then he gets interrupted by Seth Rollins. I got a kick out of Punk saying this is why can't it ever be anybody fun who interrupts me? Why couldn't it be Rhea?
I wait for one day that it's one day something like that'll happen, but it'll be a Rhea heel turn or something.
Talks about, losing to Punk last week and figuring out what his next step is. Essentially, Seth declares himself for the Rumble. Then we are interrupted by Drew McIntyre, who also declares himself for the Rumble. And I'm just sitting here. I'm like, okay, next 2 weeks, we're going to see some iteration of these three fighting each other, specifically Seth and Drew. So,
well, we're owed that, right? From over the summer, or even WrestleMania last year, basically. So you kind of expect it. The other thing is, I don't want to see a heel Seth Rollins. Don't turn Seth Rollins heel. In my opinion, there's not enough good faces on either roster. You have Cody, you have potentially LA Knight and Jey Uso are probably on the same level. Other than that, who's the most over face on either brand? I can't think of anybody. So Rollins has a bigger pop than both LA Knight and Jey Uso. So to me, I don't want to see that. I know there's inklings that they're turning him heel. There's those breadcrumbs. I don't want to see it. Don't give me a heel Seth Rollins. I think it's not worth it. I'd rather see a heel CM Punk who can put over somebody better than I think a heel Seth Rollins at this point.
No, I 100% agree with you. And I feel that with where Seth is currently at and his character over the last year or two, it doesn't make a lot of sense to turn him heel either. Now he can be a little more aggressive, sure, especially since it may or may not to be seen him spiral down. But I agree with you. I think Punk going heel would make more sense. And yeah, now that I think about it, we really don't have a lot of like strong faces on Raw or SmackDown right now, which is kind of crazy with everything going on. So, but this sets up what we're going to get tomorrow night because we get Drew versus Seth, which was previewed and announced like over the weekend. And I thought this was a pretty fun segment. You know, it kicked everything off. We are building to Royal Rumble season. Everyone's declaring themselves. I honestly don't know how this Rumble is going to shape up because everybody and their mother is declaring spots. And I'm like, so far, I'm like, that's a lot. We have a lot of big stars in this. I'm like, I truly don't know which way we're going with this anymore.
Well, the thing about it is, and this is what I really enjoy about Triple H booking, is that and Nikki and I watch a tremendous amount of Royal Rumbles. Like we just like go to sleep to wrestling every night, and Royal Rumble just seems to be the easiest thing to put on. So we watch so many of them that now that I've looked back on it, like this is a traditional Rumble in the sense that you have so many overarching and interwoven storylines that are going to happen. And I think that's what you kind of want to see. It's like and I use this example Friday night on our show, and Nikki hates both these. Well, not just one particular she's not a fan of, but like even like the Hulk Hogan Sid Vicious or Sid Justice from way back WrestleMania 9, 10, like him just pulling him out of the ring, like those just different interwoven storylines that are going to happen. And Punk is going to eliminate Rollins, or Rollins will eliminate Punk. And, Drew will somehow be involved, and that'll potentially set up the next feud for them moving into the WrestleMania card. Like that's what kind of needs to happen. Like keeping all these storylines involved, because they've only been doing 5 matches, and the Rumbles, especially Rumble season, like those are hour-long matches if you're putting both women and men on the same night now, which at least for the time being, right, it's one night. And now you have 2 bookend hour-long matches in theory, right? So you're not going to have that much in between. So you have to find a way to keep all the storylines, into that match and to keep everyone kind of in the limelight as we head towards WrestleMania season. So that's kind of what I anticipate with a lot of this, is just everyone declaring, but all the rivalries coming to a head, or at least having some sort of teaser for WrestleMania.
I agree with you when it comes to all of that. And the next 2 weeks are going to be interesting to figure out who we get declared, as well as the surprises that's going to happen. So we're going to move on from this segment, because then we get into our first match of the evening. So as it was announced last week, Chad Gable would be facing a luchador. He wanted to face the best luchador in the business. And as soon as he said that last week, I'm like, okay, now I'm going to see what we are. And sure enough, we get the debut of Mr. Penta El Zero. And then, we get into this match. Chad Gable selling the Destroyer was probably one of the... Chad's really good at selling things when he's taking these moves. I'm a fan of Penta. I am so happy he's here. I love it. I thought this was a fun match. I'm biased for sure, but I loved it.
Yeah, honestly, I mean, you couldn't pick a better technical wrestler for him to start off with, that you're going to have a great match. I feel a little bad for Chad Gable because he's just getting buried somewhat, in the mid card, or to everyone debuting, right? But at the end of the day, they made Penta look like a star with this debut, like the way he came out, acknowledging his past history in other companies, which again is a Triple H thing that we haven't seen, prior to the Triple H creative era. It was interesting to see, and I got to give Nikki credit for this one, because she said like all his moves are basically banned in WWE. So to see what his finisher would be interesting, because I thought it'd be maybe some sort of high flying move or whatever. But the the fisherman driver, or whatever you want to call it, or the Penta driver, like it's a good move for him, and especially after you use the sacrifice, it looks good. Honestly, I'm curious to see where they go with him, what his first feud is going to be, who will be with. And if, in theory, in the next year, right, if he can I think he'll compete for it for sure, but will he have a title reign with a mid-card title before Rey Fenix gets here? Because that they're going to put them together once he gets here. And my thing is, I just want to see him establish himself by, on his own before Rey gets here. Because I think, Penta has more of an upside than Rey does in WWE.
Because I agree with you. That is probably going to end up being the plan once Rey gets over here. And once he's out of his contract, then they are more than likely going to put those two together. I really love the promo that Penta cut afterwards, kind of giving him that space to be able to address the crowd, talk about what this means to him, all that good stuff.
Well, that's another thing, and not to cut you up, but that's another thing. Like he had what's his name, Alex Ice or whatever his name is, in AEW, and I didn't realize like it's another situation where like again like some teams need a mouthpiece, a voice, but Alex Abrahantes never did anything for me in AEW to be like he was a hype man. He never did anything to make them more interesting to me as a tag team, like the Penta says or whatever. Like garbage was like, and here he is cutting a promo like this, and you see like. And I haven't, you've obviously probably followed this way more like Lucha Underground, like him being able to develop his own character and show his charisma, like, man, like that. Yeah. Like I want to see more of that. Like, I can't believe like, it's like one of those things that you didn't realize what you had potentially in AEW.
Yeah. It's an interesting situation for sure. I mean, both me and you have of leading into all of this and, when this was first going down, but Penta is now in WWE. We shall see where his trajectory goes until his brother gets there. But ultimately, then we get into... So, okay, I'm probably going to get some heat for this. So, I like Sheamus. I really, really do. I think Ludwig is fine. And I know this is, getting the lick back from Survivor Series and all that, but I want these two to be done. Because I feel like they've been going at it for the last couple of months now without really any real progression of where we're going.
I agree. I mean, and especially like it's like 50-50 booking to me. Like give Kaiser the win then. If you're going to try and he's the only person that benefits in this. Sheamus doesn't get anything by like where is Sheamus going to go to another? Are they building towards a Sheamus Braun Breaker singles match for WrestleMania? Is that what we're trying to get at? Which again, I know it's the title he hasn't held, but it doesn't. I'm not really that invested in like having to see Sheamus win Grand Slam title, right? Like to me, would he be Grand Slam champion or at least close enough? But like versus Kaiser, maybe getting a little bit more credibility with a victory. Like,
it's really tough. Like I really do enjoy Sheamus, and you are right because he has yet to win the Intercontinental Championship to become Grand Slam champion.
Sort of like I feel like of like 2021, like it feels like this has been like a right during the pandemic, like right after the pandemic, it's like, Sheamus never won the title. Because who was like all the Gunther stuff, and Gunther had the belt for a year and he challenged him early on, I feel like. So like, yeah, it's at least it's a lot. Like I'm not that like I like Sheamus a lot. I just think from in this feud, the only person that benefits is if Kaiser goes over a little bit more. And like it makes him seem more like the lackey that he was for Gunther. It's like, unless we're building towards some sort of like, I'd like to see Kaiser challenge Gunther. If Gunther's going to be a face, let Kaiser be the challenger for Gunther. They kind of alluded to it the last couple months with all the Priest stuff. And was it Jay when Jay was challenging it at some point, points in time. So, he was kind of politicking his way behind the scenes to try and be the number one contender. Give me that.
Yeah, I mean, especially for Sheamus, because again, we've been telling this story since forever. And excuse my French, but I feel like with Sheamus right now is just let him have the title. But I agree with you too. I feel like the goal for Kaiser has kind of gotten lost along the way. I thought we were building to him facing Gunther at some point. Apparently, that's not the case right now. And, speaking of which, because after this match, Sheamus wins, by the way, he has a confrontation with Braun Breaker. So Braun and Sheamus will be going at it one-on-one at Saturday night's main event. And I'm just sitting here. I'm like, unless you're going to give the title to Sheamus, I don't care. Like, I don't.
Yeah, it's another one of those. They're building it up like a PLA in theory, and just I don't know. That to me is another like just like the Rollins Punk one that should have been the WrestleMania match. And it's like I get it, it's a big event, and you want to make it prestigious to some extent somehow, but to me that's not the way. I mean, I'm more okay with Sheamus Braun Breaker on this than I am with Rollins Punk being on the Netflix premiere versus the first time being at WrestleMania. I get it, but I'm not as invested in it.
No, and I was invested with this Sheamus, one championship away from being Grand Slam, but we have dragged this out. So give it to him or don't. That is where I'm at with this. So we're going to move on from this. We go into our Women's Intercontinental Championship finals, where we have, as what the internet has dubbed her as, the Bird Lady, which is Lyra Valkyria, taking on Dakota Kai. I can't believe I'm actually going to say this, but when I saw this was the finals, I truly thought to myself, you know what? I feel like this is the first time in forever where I feel like I will be okay with either option. Of course, Lyra does pick up the victory here and is the inaugural Women's Intercontinental Champion. I actually really enjoyed this match. And I just feel bad for Dakota because now we're just throwing her and the rest of Damage Control back into the feud with Pure Fusion Collective. And I'm just like, well, there goes that.
That honestly, so looking at the field originally, like Natalia seemed like the one that should have got it, but the theme that they were going with for both women's mid card belts was it seemed like someone who was either up and coming, who had never up and coming, or a workhorse who had never won a singles belt in WWE was going to win that, the US and women's intercontinental belt. So that being said, that's how in my opinion, they came to the Chelsea Green and Lyra conclusion, and Dakota would have fit that as well, right? Like, now I'm blanking. Who was in the finals for US? It was Chelsea and Michin.
Michin.
Yeah. So yeah. Same thing. So similar situation to me though. And I guess you could still do it. I think it's a miss putting on Lyra for this reason, because you already have, if Dakota wins it, right? At least with these two in the finals, Dakota wins it. You have Damage Control. You have EO, who is in the tournament, right? So you have Damage Control, who's also feuding with Pure Fusion Collective. You can put the belt around a 6-woman feud, and you can kind of not hot potato it. Not that you're going to do that, but like you can at least have Dakota challenge it to all 3 members of Pure Fusion Collective over the course of the next couple of months, maybe even into and past Mania. And then after WrestleMania, you can have her then feud internally with EO and her own girls if you really want to. And that actually makes, elevates the title to me. So, I mean, that's where my head was at in terms of putting it on her. I think it would have made more sense. But I guess the thinking is that you can still do the same with Lyra as a face and kind of have her feud with both groups. But I mean, yeah, it was a good match. It was a really good match. Lyra is great in the ring. Like I'll give her a lot of credit. My deal with her was always like the charisma or lack thereof, which I haven't really seen much with her. It's just like, I'm happy to be here. It's that whole Sami Zayn thing. It's like, I just want to see you get your ass kicked because you're happy to be there. It's like the Jacob. It's like, I'm here to beat people up, not make you smile or laugh. I don't care what you do. But I don't know. To me, overall, I think that was the miss, is that you could have put it right into a feud that means something, versus now Lyra's first feud is probably her first title defense is going to be another one of the predictable wins for her.
Right. So, I mean, I really enjoyed the match. I am interested to see where the trajectory of Lyra goes. I hope we do something more with Dakota once or if we decide to end this feud with Pure Fusion Collective. But overall, I thought this was a lot of fun. I really, really enjoyed it. Now, dear Ripley, I love you. That is all. Again, I feel like I'm going to get some hate when I say this, but I would preface by saying I was never a Liv hater. But I agree that the feud between Rhea and Liv was kind of overplaying itself a little bit, and I'm kind of glad that we ended it last week. So I am happy that she is champion. So I just appreciate it. I really do. I'm interested to see where we go with her.
Yeah. My whole problem was that I don't think either, like, I wanted Liv to win too. I thought Liv deserved to get the W and needed it more and could have used the momentum further. But I think the issue was that neither woman had a clear-cut feud post this rivalry, and I don't think they really built it. And the problem was, like, you're at that transitional period of, like, where you're building up a rivalry for WrestleMania, which is fine because how many other rivalries get built up that we're seeing right now during WrestleMania season? But you shouldn't do that, in my opinion, with the world titles. And you should have at least, like, aside from the Royal Rumble winner, right? You should have some built-in big. WrestleMania is usually the culmination of all the major storylines. And that was my biggest pet peeve with this, is that it was tough because dragging it out another 2 months would have been tough. But I think you could have done it, but neither woman has a clear-cut feud post.
You know what? Let's just address it right now. So Becky is waiting in the wings at some capacity. On SmackDown, we got that vignette for Charlotte Flair returning. And so I'm just like, all right, well, I would not be surprised if those are the 2 opponents for our champions leading into WrestleMania.
Yeah, I could totally. But again, then you're running it back with Becky Rhea second straight year,
which is weird.
Yeah, like that doesn't. I like, and even talk about it. I guess when we get to SmackDown, like the Tiffy potential. I don't like Tiffy as a face And I think that's what she's being presented as. But we'll get into that
I
later.
want her. Yeah, when we get to Tippy time, we'll talk about her because I have the exact same feelings. I kind of want her to go back to her heel persona when she was in NXT, but we'll talk about it when we get there. Speaking of champions, this is Gunther gets into the ring. He talks about it. I was like, for Gunther right now. Okay, fine, I guess.
Yeah, I'm all right. I'm going to stay positive for one thing. They're at least giving him back and keeping him in the main event scene for Jay,
True.
because I thought that they were just going to, bury him and relegate him back to the mid card. But if you were going to capitalize on everything for him, even if he had a short reign, you should have put the world title on. The Intercontinental title on him for whatever that short 1 month stint was dumb. I would have rather him take the belt off of Gunther for like a month as like a quick flash in the pan surprise win before getting back into the Bloodline storyline. It would have made him look that much stronger as a singles star. So I like that they're putting him back in the main event scene to try and capitalize off his popularity, because like we talked about earlier, there's not many faces in the main event scene. But yeah, I guess this is what's next for everyone, the OG Bloodline and the new Bloodline. Like, as they keep them away, this is where they see it. But I mean, I think they can have a decent match, but it's another kind of lose-lose. Like, does Jay lose again challenging for this belt? And does that really elevate Gunther that much into WrestleMania season? I don't know who's the challenger for Gunther. The next challenge, are we talking about one of the Punks, Punk Rollins McIntyre challenging him at WrestleMania? I don't love it, but again, it just reeks of very much of a, like, this would be a WrestleMania or Royal Rumble match, main event match, where it's like, you're going to get the champion by. How many, I call them like transitional challengers, come in where it's like, all right, they're a credible enough threat, but they're not going to win the belt just to put over the champ to get into WrestleMania season.
Yeah, so I mean, we do have we have until April, so we have some time to build up a credible challenge. And with the Rumble and Elimination Chamber, they can figure out a way to get people to face off against our champions. Because usually whoever gets picked, whoever the Rumble winners picked, the Elimination Chamber fills in the other spot for everybody else. So I'm interested to see where those two events go from all of this, which leads us into our main event of this episode, which was a street fight for the final time. Thank goodness, between Damian Priest and Finn Balor. We kind of dragged this feud out a little bit longer than it needed to be. But this is the whole Triple H. This better be it. I don't want to see these two fight again. Don't bring them on my screen again together. Let this be it for a little bit. Let it breathe.
Yeah, finally, it's time again. Another big on, like, it should have happened when, like, but it's due. Now I wonder how long they're going to keep Balor off TV, and what this means now for the Judgment Day. Like, Balor's off TV. You have all the stuff with Liv and Dom post the Rhea interaction. So it'll be interesting to see what exactly happens with that whole group in Balor's absence and stuff. And again, like, where does he go? They were headed towards a match with the Wyatt Six, and now we're moving the Wyatt Six to SmackDown. And that, I thought the Wyatt Six would have been the end of the Judgment Day, essentially. Let them be the Grim Reaper of that group. And that would have bled right into both persona, the persona of what the Wyatt Six do, the whole family idea. And we're not getting that. I don't think you needed this match to be the blow off. You could have just let them stay away and then teased for the next 3 or 4 weeks the Wyatt Six with the Judgment Day.
Yeah, I'm puzzled that we're moving the Wyatt Six to SmackDown. I mean, yeah, it's an interesting thing for sure. But Damian Priest does win the street fight. Triple H, let this be it. Let them go their separate ways. Keep Finn off of television for however long he's going to be kept off television, so we can move on with that. Wash our hands clean. Exactly. So I have some people like, why did there was one more match? I'm like, no, I purposely skipped Sammy and Miz because that was like a 5-minute match. I'm gonna be real. We don't need to cover that. I'm just like, nah, we're good. It was just a match to have a match for. Sammy's gonna get on the microphone tomorrow night, so we'll see what that all entails. But that, ends our Raw review. So now we jump on over to Friday Night SmackDown, where we also have a lot of things that kind of happen. I have come to the understanding that these 3-hour SmackDowns are going to be more so where what we get announced isn't going to be the end all be all things, because in a 3-hour show, we got lots of things that happened here. I'm just like, all right.
Or really 3 hours of either, unless it's a PLA or a pay-per-view. They don't need 3 hours.
It's really hard to make 3 hours engaging for the whole entire time through. I think 2 to 2.5 hours is a good sweet spot of like getting stuff on television, getting characters developed, all that kind of stuff. Because when you have 3 hours like this, you tend to meander through some of the bits. So let's just talk about what kicked off the show. More people announcing for the Rumble. The Rey Mysterio announces himself for the Rumble. And I'm just sitting here. I'm just like, dang. I'm like, I truly don't know who is going to win this now. This is going to be interesting. But then, of course, he gets interrupted by Kevin Owens. It sets up their match later in the evening.
Was that a little bit of sarcasm of who you don't know who's going to win, or you like legit don't know? Because I can't.
I don't know. I'm very surprised. Well, I shouldn't be surprised. I think under Triple H booking, they're doing a smart job of announcing like the big stars who's going to be in the Rumble to get more people to watch, because we have Cena, Reigns, Drew, Punk, now Rey Mysterio. Of course, we're probably going to get some surprises. We might get some returns. I would not be surprised if we see a couple of the NXT crew come on up, especially, 2 people who lost their championships recently. So we also, now that we have this announcement with this NXT TNA, I would not be surprised if we saw like 1 or 2 TNA stars in the Rumble, in 2 weeks as well.
Possibilities are endless.
I just need the men's Rumble to be better than it has been the last 2 years, because I have not enjoyed the men's Rumble the last 2 years. It's been so boring.
That's fair. What? That's fair. How about someone ex-TNA legend, Rob Van Dam? How about that? That's a good, that's one that has been in TNA for a while and then hasn't been. I think he's been cleared. He's been wrestling in AEW a little bit. Back for the couple. Give me 1-5.
We love to see it. So again, Ray calls his spot in the Rumble. Kevin Owens interrupts, sets up their match later in the evening. So prior to this next match, we get a backstage segment with Bianca and Naomi, where Naomi tells Bianca that she hasn't had any luck kind of figuring out who attacked Jade. And then, of course, I love social media because they're quick on it, because then on social media, someone screen capped Jade Cargill's like post during that time. She's like, oh, really? I'm like, I'm interested to see. It's kind of the worst kept secret that Naomi was the one who attacked Jade. I'm more interested to see how and why and where we go with Naomi and Bianca and Jade with all of this. I would love that. And I mean, it's going to be interesting too, because not this Tuesday, but next Tuesday, the Meta Girls will be facing off against Naomi and Bianca for the tag titles on NXT in Atlanta, because they won this past week a number 1 contenders match against, the Unholy Union. So I would not be surprised if Naomi is leading the Meta for the Meta Girls into this new faction. I'm here for it.
Yeah, let her turn and drop the belt. Screw over Bianca next week. Drop the belts to the Meta 2, and then that's how the faction forms. And eventually you find out. I mean, she could do the reveal next week. I was the one who took out Jade, or me and these girls took out Jade. And, literally that happens next week. And then, you wait another week, and there's credible. And now when you look at it, there's some credible challengers, because, oh my gosh, was it Chikara? Is she the one that's Trick Williams's boo?
No, Lash would Lash Legend. Yeah.
It was a Lash Legend. Yeah, I'm trying to, like, the way she was presented with that Piper, that doing her finishing move to Piper Nevin, right? Like, being able, her strength, she's presented similarly to Jade. So you can actually, put this into this feud and actually make it believable. Because the problem with Jade and how she's been booked is no one looks like they could take down Jade.
Right.
I would argue that aside from the main event ladies, right, like the Becky Lynches of the world, the Biancas of the world, there really isn't anyone that looks like that they could take it down. There hasn't been a single person that hasn't done it. It being a group, right? What happened with, oh my gosh, they won the belts in the triple threat. Ivy Nile, Alba Fire, and
Isla Dawn, the Unholy Union, yeah.
Yeah, Unholy Union looked the same thing. You had to have a whole group of 3 women that would double team one of the girls, and that's why Jade or Bianca would get taken. Same thing. She hasn't been presented as someone, but you could present Lash as the muscle in the group for Naomi, and Naomi makes them tag champs, and maybe it makes her a credible challenger for the world title.
I hope that's the case. But now that we've kind of talked about that, we get into the match itself. This is exactly went the way I thought it would. Naomi and Bianca winning. Nia Jax ultimately causing damage to Candice LeRae when she accidentally sits on her. after Bianca gets out the way, Naomi and Bianca pick up the victory here. I'm interested to see where we go with Nia. Especially, I'm pretty sure we're going to see her in the Rumble, so we'll see what happens with all of that.
Yeah, I don't like taking her away without letting her get a rematch against Tiffy. I think that's still a money match that's yet to happen, and them not doing that and potentially moving her back to Raw is a big miss. It's going to lose all the momentum. Nia's been great. I don't want to see Nia versus Tiffany 6 months from now.
No, we need to get that match happening soon. Especially, I want Nia to be able to get a rematch if the plan allegedly is for Tiffy and Charlotte to go up against each other at Mania. So I want to see this rematch either happen at, the Rumble. If you're not going to have Nia be in the Rumble or even in an Elimination Chamber, who knows? So we move on. Solo Sikoa is just so dejected. The Timu bloodline is struggling right now. He doesn't even talk. He gets in the ring, he gets on the mic, and he just leaves. He left.
He got the new day treat.
Damn. He's just like, I'm leaving, you guys. I'm done. And, Solo leaves. He's walking out through the crowd. And then we get the best thing that could ever happen on a weekly basis on Smack when you allow Jacob Fatu to get on that microphone.
So I have so many feelings about this. I don't know. I love Jacob, and Jacob's going to be a star if he isn't already.
Right.
But Solo, it's, to me, already a mistake not letting him win and claim the Ulafala, because it does more for him. But now he gets relegated to the mid card, and I get the feeling that, there's two things. There's two thoughts. Like we were just talking about the Judgment Day and the Wyatt Six going to feud with the Bloodline. Is that the WrestleMania faction match that we're gonna get, like the 8-10 man tag? Or
right,
the other thing is it's relegated. The loss relegates Solo right back to the mid card. Not that he was going to be a super main event player anyway, but it puts him right in the mid card where I expected him now to challenge like LA Knight potentially for the US title at WrestleMania. And I think we're seeing inklings of that with generally what we see here afterwards, right? With a little bit with what are we calling them? They're not the Samoan SWAT right 2.0, but basically like Tama and Jacob. So we're starting to see kind of inklings of that, and maybe it's more of with the 3-hour SmackDown, like they're trying to load up the mid card with the tag division too, and maybe put them back in the tag division. It seems like that they're more likely to be there at least for the more immediate future. And I don't think it does enough for anybody. Like from this, the promo, Jacob looks strong in the promo, but I think it's just setting them up to be in the mid card as a tag team and a dominant tag team where they'll probably reclaim the tag titles or at least be in the runnings for it. But again, like I know the Bloodline stuff may be getting a little washed and worn at this point in time, but could have done so much more with what's going on. And I don't know. I'm really curious to see what happens with Solo next now. Because are they setting up a Solo Jacob match at some point in time? Like, because of this, is Jacob going off on his own with Tama? Like, could that open up for Hikuleo being like a new enforcer for Solo and him being there's so many possibilities, but I don't know that what I want to happen is going to happen. I think it's more of we're gonna bury him in the mid card, and this is just gonna be a missed opportunity.
Right. And so I want to briefly touch on, because I totally skipped the match on purpose that happened before this, which was Jimmy and Carmelo. It was fine. I don't know what we're doing with Carmelo anymore. Like, what is happening?
Oh, that actually, I'm glad you mentioned that, because it bleeds into my point that I just said, about putting them in with the 3-hour SmackDowns in the mid card, the tag division. I think Trick Williams is coming up to join with Melo. Mm-hmm. I know a lot of people don't like that but I think that they're going to put them right back together on the main roster, and they're going to rehash a lot. Like what DIY did, they're going to do the same thing with Melo and Trick, just a little bit sooner.
I see we were a couple of chapters too long of, elongating that storyline, because Stand and Deliver should have been the match where it ended, and then we continued it with 3 weeks later. We continued it for another 3 weeks. I'm like, that's 3 weeks too long. It should have ended at Stand and Deliver, but it is what it is. So this match happened. Then we got what we got with Solo. So we move on, because lots of tag team action this episode in the last couple of weeks per se, because we have the Motor City Machine Guns taking on Los Garza. I don't assume anything, because assuming things makes, an ass out of you and me, so to speak. But I need them to do a better job of confirming, because they were hinting at there might be some number one, contendership application to this match, but then there's not. I'm just like, can y'all figure out if you want to make this a number one contenders match or not? And then you convolute it, because then what we get for next week, I'm just like, what is happening right now? This is wild to me. I'm like, did Montez do something he wasn't supposed to? Like, what is going on with the Prophet?
Yeah, it's another one. Well, I think they're loading up. I mean, this show kind of had that theme of like, I think now with the 3-hour SmackDown, they have to have more of a mid card, so they're loading up more with tag teams. You're going to see probably at least one more tag match each night, and I think that's kind of what we're seeing here. Is they're trying to figure out how to keep the tag division fresh and interesting for the 3-hour show. And my thought, they're trying to keep the guns away, at least for temporarily, away from DIY, because that rematch potentially could be another WrestleMania match. Like, I keep saying it's gonna be the theme of my comments here, but like I think a lot of it is who can we put in as a stopgap, so to speak, to get us through, a 1 month feud or so before the feuds we want to culminate happen and the big matches happen. So to me, this is like, that's why we're seeing so many tag division people. I think I think we're going to see Trick Williams come up. I think maybe at some point in time in the very near future, Fraxium probably will be called up. Like,
Probably.
There's going to be a more of an emphasis on the tag division. And I think there's going to be probably more, and I hope it doesn't deplete the NXT roster, because I think they've got really, really great talent there now that they've just brought in. And if Jordan Grace goes there as well, she might go to Maine. But like, I think you're going to see more of the I think you're 100% right. Roxanne Perez, I think, is getting called up. I think more women are going to be called up for the mid card as well.
I agree with you there. And the funny thing about this match too is that Pretty Deadly tried to cost Motor City Machine Guns, because DIY is playing them like fiddles and pulling the strings like they're puppets. But unfortunately, it backfires. Motor City Machine Guns does win. And we also get a match between Motor City Machine Guns and Pretty Deadly next week, which we'll talk about in a little bit. Really quickly, we do get a short match, Piper Niven versus B-Fab in all of this. So, B-Fab is doing great. Somebody's at my door. So let's talk about Piper and B-Fab while I go answer that.
Nice. I guess I'm taking over. It's an interesting one. To me, we're building towards Piper getting a couple victories, at least enough so that she can challenge Chelsea Green, and we're planting the seeds towards that doubt, which I hate, because I like them together. Saucy little, spicy little margaritas. But I don't know. It's going to be an interesting dynamic. Mishin's getting a pretty big push at this point in time, but I think that's going back to my point from earlier, a lot with the mid card. I think I see Mikey in the background. Is he coming in? There he is. You ready to rock, Mikey?
You never know who's popping up. But again, I do like that we are getting more of a mid card with the women. I mean, with Chelsea and Piper being a team, Michin and B-Fab have unofficially become a team. So we have at least 4 women in this United States Championship scene.
Yeah, I just don't. I was saying earlier, I just hope that they're not planting the seeds towards Piper, Piper, Chelsea turning, because I really like them as a team together.
Right. I feel like we don't need to take them away from each other, have one of them turn.
Exactly. It's not a necessity, but every time I see Piper get a win, we're building.
It is not. So then we get, yes, maybe. We shall see. All right. I hope we're going in a tag team route first before we get into a one-on-one between Piper and Chelsea, but we'll see what happens with all of that. So we get Kevin Owens versus Rey Mysterio. I thought this was a solid match. I love Kevin Owens. Rey Mysterio does the Rey Mysterio things, but Kevin Owens picks up the win here after doing a pop-up power bomb on Rey Mysterio. So really trying to keep Cody and Kevin away, which doesn't work, because then after this match, they get to brawling.
Yeah, I like that KO is doing the pop-up powerbomb once again. Like, he does it, but like, I always like that move as a finisher.
Right.
It was pretty neat. I mean, yeah, like, Rey is still just so, it's crazy. I feel like every year he says he's retiring,
but then he doesn't.
Yeah, and like, he doesn't, like, and like, I'm like, all right, guy, retire, but he's still so freaking good that it's just like, I'm like, all right, I get it. And then every time it's like, what is he, like 65, and he's like bouncing around? It's like, just retire already. And then I'm like, no, he still does it really well.
I'm telling you, stem cells will do wonders for you.
Seriously.
But again, after the match, Cody and Kevin fight. You go to commercial, you come back, At Saturday night's main event, we're going to have both Kevin and Cody relinquish their championship belts before the Rumble. So they're going to they're going to have a contract signing at Saturday night's main event that will be moderated by Shawn Michaels. And I'm just sitting here and I'm like, I'm very intrigued of what's going to happen. We got to fill that show up with something because right now it's just 3 matches for this Saturday.
Yeah, I mean, would Shawn be like a special guest enforcer or referee? Like, I get it. He's done a lot of ladder matches, and I'm a big Shawn Michaels fan. Just, I don't know what. Like, I guess is he synonymous with ladder matches? I don't know. I guess so. I would associate Jeff Hardy more with ladder matches now than I would Shawn Michaels. But I get it. You know, have with TNA the crossover, maybe you just have Jeff Hardy come out.
Would not be surprised.
But no, I mean, we'll see. Yeah, they're gonna have to fill up the show with something. But I expect that match to be really, really good.
No, I'm excited for this ladder match at Rumble.
Yeah. If you're telling me that again, like the Rumble's going to be bookended with the Rumble matches that are hour longs, then there's probably going to be 3 matches in between. So if you give me that, and then right before the main event, you give me a ladder match, sign me up. That's a good 3. You're 60% of the way there, keeping me interested for a 5-match PLA.
I lost my train of thought. I was going to say something, and then I forgot. Now I remember what I was going to say. I don't want Kevin Owens in this match. I want Kevin Steen, because anybody who knows the ladder matches that Kevin Steen had in Ring of Honor were nuts. Obviously, I don't know how far WWE would let Kevin go into that playbook, but there's about to be carnage, and I'm excited for it.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, you know something? I'd like to see him try. He's not going to do it because he already put him out, but like the package pile driver on like the ladder or something.
Right.
He was like that. But
before we get into our main event, because the reason I put this here is because I love Pretty Deadly. I really, really do. I want them to progress into being smarter about this because they got frustrated with DIY with what's going down. You know, Johnny and Tommaso playing them like fiddles. Apollo Crews is still telling Pretty Deadly, hey, y'all need to get it together. You cannot believe a word they said. And then Apollo Crews, after Pretty Deadly leave, gets jumped by DIY. So for some reason, I get the feeling that we might see a DIY Pretty Deadly match coming up shortly, which would be really interesting and weird. But yeah, there's a lot of tag teams on SmackDown right now. At least their tag division is thriving. I'm looking over at Raw. I'm like, damn, you guys, what's happening?
Yeah, well, again, Pretty Deadly it reminds me so much of Breezango. Of like, yeah, they're doing the comedic act, and it's so tough for that to get over and to be viewed as just like a legitimate threat. And like the fans love it, but for the bookers, they're like, we're not gonna put the belts on them. It reminds me of like, who was it? Oh my god, like 3-4 years ago, Rhino and Heath Slater, when they did the I Got Kids, and like they're like everyone was like, you know, making fun of the I Got Kids thing, and then he put him with Rhino, and they gave him enough momentum to win the belts. I don't see that happening with I call him Breezango. With Pretty Deadly, I still love them with like, if Tiffany Stratton was heel, and maybe this will be a nice segue, I would love them with Tiffany Stratton, like them being, you know, her assistants
when they were briefly together. I was all here for all of that. So, well, speaking of Tiffy, she was involved in our main event, in which she defended her title against Bayley, who won the Fatal 4-Way last week on SmackDown. I really thought this was a good main event. I feel that, and I say this all the time, I feel like Bayley is a very good worker, and I think she was a perfect first opponent for Tiffany's first like title match defense, because I feel like both women looked really great in this match. Really loved the swanton that Tiffany executed. I thought that thing looked beautiful to watch. Like, ooh, it was so good. But Tiffany does retain. So Roxanne Perez is in the crowd. Surprised we didn't see her kind of cause Bayley anything, but I'm waiting for that to happen. I would not be surprised if we get Roxanne throwing Bayley out during the Rumble.
I think that's going to be saved for Raw. I think Bayley's moving to Raw, and I think Roxanne's probably going to go to Raw too.
True.
With everything going on there. But we touched on it earlier, and now I can vent on it, I guess, in this segment. But I don't want a face Tiffy Stratton, and it seems like, I know when the cash in, everyone was super pumped about it, and you're going to get a babyface pop for a cash in general, heel or face, doesn't really matter. So I think people take more into account than necessary. She's not a face to me. She's very well liked because she's great at what she does. That does not mean you are a babyface. It means that you're good at what you do. MJF is great at what he does. He's not a babyface. He's a great heel. And that's what people cheer him because they know he's that good. I'm a big fan of MJF because you know he's that good. Same concept. She should be a heel. And there's a couple things that bother me. Like, I agree with you. Like, veteran Bailey, you put her in that role. It gives her credibility. That's probably why they did it. But we miss out on the Nia rematch, which really I think is the money match that you could do once, maybe twice, even before Mania. She's not going to carry the brand as a babyface. She's going to carry it as a heel. And that's where my issue is. If we saw the videos, they alluded to it with Charlotte coming back. Charlotte comes back. To me, Charlotte's a better heel too, is better as a heel, but she will be better as a face than Tiffy will be in this feud. So to me, I don't like where it's headed and them presenting Tiffy as a face, because you have to do a lot of more of the face moves, like even her Alabama Slam, like the gymnastics aspect. I know she's been kind of doing it for a while already, but everything with that it's a little bit more of a higher scrutiny, I feel like, for babies. It's easier to work as a heel, and I'd rather her be a little bit of a, chicken shit, heel, running away, give her Pretty Deadly from Nia Jax for a month or two. Like, there's so much more to doing that and being able to carry that out longer than her seemingly working as a babyface. That's why I'm a little concerned, and I'm really upset with them presenting her like this. If in next week she starts doing a little bit more heelish things, great. But to me, it's a big miss making her work as a babyface, and this was a babyface type match. But it was a great match. I mean, I think a little sloppy towards the end on some things with the finish, but I mean, again, it served its purpose to put Tiffy over as a legitimate champion, not just a fluke, Money in the Bank winner like we saw with Carmella.
Yeah. Oof. That was a rough one to watch. But yeah, Tiffany is our winner. And, her holding up the champion is what ends SmackDown this week. And that brings us to the WWE this week. I feel like we're in a weird period. I was like, the Rumble is in 2 weeks. And with Saturday Night Main Event happening this upcoming weekend, man, these next 2 weekends are about to get crazy. I was like, oh, what are we doing? It's crazy. Season is upon us.
Yeah, it literally, we have Saturday, then Royal Rumble. Yeah, it's going to be a fun time for wrestling. And then I'm sure somewhere sprinkled in there, there's some our rival competitor AEW pay-per-views and TNA. So that's what we love about WrestleMania season. The programming gets elevated. WWE elevates their programming. Everybody comes back. We're gonna have John Cena this season. We're gonna have CM Punk for this, hopefully, knock on wood, this full WrestleMania season. Drew McIntyre, Seth Rollins for a healthy Seth Rollins for the full WrestleMania season. It's really exciting. We're going to have Charlotte on the women's side for full WrestleMania season. Tiffy Stratton, I think she came in at the Rumble, but she wasn't as prominent as she was, after Mania. So we have her for the whole season. So I'm really excited. This is that time of year. It is the holiday season for wrestling fans.
100%. I'm super excited to see where this goes. And, we'll be back next Sunday to cover another week of WWE programming as we get ready for Rumble, which is going to be super excited. But this week is all be kind of busy here for us here at BC Wrestle. Outside of WWE stuff, we got a whole lot of things. Later today, the GCW Hammerstein show is tonight, so we will be doing a watch along of the People versus GCW. We got AEW coverage on Tuesday, NXT and CMLL on Wednesday. Thursday is the pay-per-view review for the GCW show. And then also happening tonight too, but on Friday we will be reviewing TNA Genesis. So I'm interested to see which NXT stars cross the line, so to speak. And a shout out to our host, Will, who is going to be at the show live. So I'm excited to get the pictures from him at Genesis. Is going to be great. And then, of course, we're doing a live watch along this upcoming Saturday for Saturday night's main event. And then we'll be back here on Sunday for WWE. A busy week for us. Nick, thank you so much for being here. I love having you on the channel.
Hey, a pleasure as always. Again, always a blast hanging out with you, chatting wrestling. So
I love it so much. Well, that's going to be it for us here at Dual Dynasty. Again, we have a busy week coming up for BC WrestlePod, so you're going to need to tune into everything to see what goes down. But for myself, a friend to the channel, Nick, and the rest of the BC WrestlePod family, remember, take care of yourself, love one another, stay iconic. More importantly than anything, you always deserve to finish your story. we'll catch you later this evening for the GCW.
Thank you so much for tuning in to another Vibe Tribe production. What's gonna happen next time? Well, you're gonna have to tune in to find out. But until then, remember, take care of yourself, love one another, and as always, make sure that you keep the good times rolling. Thank you for being here, and we'll see you next time.